Hey everyone, welcome to Talent Talk, a show where I, your host, Chaz Becker, sit down with other CliftonStrengths coaches and core clarity facilitators, and we just geek out about a talent that is in their top 5. And so today I'm super excited to be joined by Dr. Tieshia Moore, who is a strengths and business coach. And we're going to be talking about command today. And after the conversation, if you're like, oh, I'd really love to learn more about what Tiesha does and get connected with her, you can find her at tieshiamore.com. But I'm going to turn it over to Tiesha and have her just introduce herself a little bit and share a little bit more about what she does.
Sure. Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Tieshia Moore, Chief Strategist of tieshiamore.com. In my former life, I used to be a college faculty member, and I always say I am a learner first turned purpose-based researcher. And here I am working day in and day out with entrepreneurs, people who are super ambitious and highly influential. That leads to a lot of different kinds of things in their lives. I really look at people from the 360 perspective. So who are they on the whole, in the entirety? How are you in your spiritual life? How are you in your health? How are you in your interpersonal relationships? And so that's really what I lean into. I spend a lot of time working with people and their businesses nowadays, because strengths, as I have come to find out, is this beautiful gift, not only for individuals, but for everybody around that individual. So really maximizing the power of not only strengths, but strengths in groups, strengths in numbers, and really leading into that. So I'm super pumped to be here today to talk about one of the least strong top 5 in all of the Clifton Strength Finder results. Command is on the bottom 5. We don't like to say it like that, but that's what it is. It's the least or the most infrequent.
One of the least prevalent, right?
That's right. It's rare. It is a gem. It is a gift.
Totally. And what I'm excited about this one is I think sometimes when people find out they have it, or they know someone else have it, it can be a little intimidating at times. Yes. And I've experienced that in my life with some colleagues who had command, and then watching that become healthy and actually like harness it as a strength and the real power that it has and how amazing it is to have people around you with command. So I'm really excited to dive into the theme today. So without further ado, Tiesha, tell me a little bit about what you love about having command. Why do you love having command?
So command is one of the talents that really harnesses presence. I really, really love the ability to make quick, decisive actions, to be able to go into new situations that I've never, ever faced before, things that feel chaotic or crazy. At the moment, we are living through a global pandemic where everybody is going, we've never done this before. I'm crazy. Everybody's kind of running around and super emotionally charged, and command gives me the ability, it has given a lot of people the ability to get clarity fast. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we think of clarity as like, okay, well, what career am I supposed to do next? Or who am I supposed to marry? I mean, there's 1,000 questions that we have as individuals, and command gives the ability to cut through noise and get to clear paths forward very quickly. So, one of the things that I most love is the clarity that command brings. And so often when I go into a room, there's people that say, well, we know that you're here. And I literally don't have to say anything at all. I don't have to say a word. Command is about presence, and command is about action, and command is about clarity. Those 3 things have been a wonderful gift to me at various times in life. A lot of us, we haven't totally unpacked what that looks like or feels like. If you spot someone, a lot of times we think about command synonymously with leadership. It's not necessarily the case that people high in command are great leaders, but a lot of times you got the people who can make quick actions, who can go in ways that have never been crossed before. And you can get people who emerge as leaders who are just not taunted and daunted by what the unknown looks like. Most typically, they have some form of command in their dominant strengths. They're somewhere close to the top where they're really just not afraid of that.
Totally. Yeah, and I feel this sense when I think of my friends who have command, when they step into a room, there's like that presence piece that's like, okay, they're there. And then you can easily look to them and then say, where do you go? Where do we go because they already have a sense of that. Like, it's just natural, like stepping in saying, I think this is the direction we need to head. And that just being clear. And so, yeah, before we keep going, I'm going to pause us and kind of give Gallup's definition of command here. And so people exceptionally talented in the command theme have presence. We've already been talking about that. And so it's in the theme definition here. And so they can take control of a situation and make decisions. And so kind of what we've already been talking about there, right from Gallup themselves.
Yeah.
And so this presence and this ability to make decisions, and it's in the influencing kind of quadrant of themes. And so thinking through, how does it like motivate, rally, and move people to action? Because someone with command is there and they're already taking that action. They're taking command of the situation and moving things forward with clear decisions. So yeah, and so I'd love to hear a little bit of, and you don't have to just talk about like this moment in your life and business and work, but also just like, you know, future jobs and things you used to do and how command has shown up in your life.
It has shown up for as long as I can remember. Oddly enough, I now live in the southern part of the United States, but when I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. My cousin and I are just a month apart, and so we did a lot together. We had a lot of fun times together, but one of the things, I know many of you won't believe this, but it is true, I grew up polka dancing. Okay, so I know how to polka dance. You know,
nice,
now
I love that.
I know, it's a great fun fact. But here's the thing, when you're polka dancing, you typically are dancing male and female. Now, my cousin, the one who I was mentioning, is just a month apart. She's also a female. And so we grew up polka dancing together and learning together. Our grandmother, I have fond memories of my grandmother teaching us, and she was sort of the matriarch and did the duty of teaching all of the grandkids how to polka dance in their time. And so the deal, though, is when you have a dancing partner, one person needs to be the leader and one person needs to be the follower, typically those male and female roles. And in the most traditional sense. And I remember without a shadow of a doubt, it was, I am leading us. Easy. Period.
Yeah.
Like there's never
no question.
There's never conversation. There was never anything. And so from even the moments of me being in my youngest years, I can see and now look back to go, that was command. That was command. It was command, command, command. I have another time when I was thinking through, we were in college, my husband and I were going to Aruba to our friend's wedding, and I was there as a guest, right? No notice, no nothing. I didn't have a role. I wasn't anything. I get there, and the wedding was a little chaotic. Okay, let's just say chaotic.
Yeah.
There was the photographs were happening. The family was everywhere. Everyone was talking to everyone. And they weren't really doing what the bride and groom wanted. So immediately, and without being asked or prompted in any way, shape, or form, I was like, hey, they need you over here. Get over here in the picture. You know, like, it was me. I was the new wedding photographer, self-proclaimed.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I could look and see my friends' faces. I knew that it was a special day for them. And so command certainly poked through. Now, if we unpack both of those things, but specifically this last example that I gave, my intention, my heart's intention was to do a favor for my friends who were getting married. It was to help them, to see the distress and kind of the frustration in their eyes, wanting to get everybody together, right? I was a guest. Nobody knew who I was. I was not in charge, but self-proclaimed. It was, you get over here. You take this picture. No, tilt your head, you know, like the whole nine. It was the whole situation. So much so that that people kind of looked at me like, who are you? Like,
yeah, exactly.
That happens with command a lot. Like, who made you the leader? And then, you know, later after people get the sting of that out of their system, and I, you know, can figure out how this is going to actually be best delivered, then the couple said, thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing what we went to set ourselves. Those are the examples of where a lot of times command doesn't need a fancy introduction. It doesn't need a platform. It doesn't even need the thing to your title that says you are the leader. A command, somebody high in this talent really is looking for the opportunity to lead. And if things are chaotic, it just rises as a natural inclination without thought, sometimes without premeditation of any sort. It just does. And really, honestly, I like to say it like this. My command, at least, thrives in chaos. It thrives in chaos. I actually don't need to have a leadership role every day. I don't need to always be the one in charge. It doesn't come all the time. But if it's chaos, oh, you better believe I'm like, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Everybody fuck up. You know, absolutely. Yeah. It rises up, and I really have to be cautious over when to let that come out and when to dial that puppy back.
Mm-hmm. But I think connected to that chaos piece is when there's chaos, we don't always know where to look, right? And that's a part of why there's chaos, is things are moving and it's like, where do we go? What do we do next? And we don't know where to look. And it's so natural for that command to start coming to the head, because what it's saying is, I can set someone to look at. I can set the direction for how to bring the chaos down. And so it makes total sense that in situations of chaos that it just comes out. Like, it just has to happen, because that's what it's doing, is it's taking chaos and helping it come under control.
Yeah.
And so
it's distilling things down that feel confusing, that feel murky, that feel like they're all over the place. It also happens, it also happens when there is a proclaimed leader, but it looks like the leader's in trouble, or the leader doesn't have a real strong gut inclination of the way forward. Those are stickier situations that maybe we could talk about later, when it's really how you really have to navigate command, and how you have to work with it when you're influencing people without a title. Those are tricky scenarios, because I've certainly navigated some of those as well. I mean, honestly, it's when I sense indecision, when I sense anything that feels like it's spiraling, that's where command is rising up. And I just can't punctuate enough that it's so natural, it's so innate, and command really isn't necessary. It could be about me, or it could not. The way forward or the way out of the chaos could be something and a solution that I can offer, or it could be not at all. So it's really not about me as the leader as much as it is about the path out.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's so great. I think for other people who might be listening and don't have command, or are thinking about the people of command, and so often it's like, oh, that person's like power hungry or something. And it's like, that's not really the driving force of command. It's that desire to move the group out of the chaos, and into, clarity, and that harmonious kind of, where it's like, okay, we know what we're doing. And so
yeah.
I think you've shared some great stories. And I remember before we were talking, you were sharing a little bit of working for Goodwill back in the day. And I'm wondering if you have any stories from Goodwill of kind of, as you were stepping into leadership and leading, and kind of more of the nonprofit corporation type situation, and how command showed up there.
Oh yeah. The opportunity was for Habitat for Humanity, and it was
not Goodwill. Sorry.
It's all good. It was in the southern part of the United States. So let me paint the picture for you quickly. I'll give you some context. All right.
Yeah.
It was the southern part of the United States. Clearly, you can see that I'm from a diverse background, right? And this part of the United States was not at all diverse. I went into a small town where we lived, and I was finishing up my doctoral degree. And all throughout my life, I'd had opportunities to lead and led in groups, honestly, but I was a lifelong academic. As soon as I finished my doctorate, I spent some time teaching, and really dove into the teaching and learning space, and I loved it. But on a whim, my husband slid a job announcement to me, and he said, I think you should apply for this. And about 45 minutes away from our town was a little Habitat for Humanity affiliate, and each of them are separate entities. And he said, they're looking for an executive director. Now, something in me was it was a very conflicting experience. For one, I was happy. I was completely happy teaching. It was one of the things that I said I wanted to do, and the achiever in me had reached it, and I was super excited about that milestone in my life. But the conflict came as I started to investigate the organization. And when I could read between the lines and look up some reviews and do my homework and do my research, I realized very quickly that it was an organization in trouble. Now, command, we talked about its presence and chaos and all of these things, the truth of the matter is a lot of times our strengths show up with people, shows up in ourselves, or it can show up in our activities or like the things that we do. And so this natural draw to chaos as opposed to running away from chaos. So some people would go, I don't have anything to do with an organization in trouble. I was going, I can help you. I can show you the way out. So here I was, going out for what I thought was a job that, I'd never had the ability to be the person in charge completely with everything up to me. I had lots of opportunities, but they were all sort of seasonal or just an annual leadership role, or I always had bosses. So I go into this, the interview, and they said, you've got exactly what we need. We know that we just feel it, right? That you can dig us out of this hole. There was some financial things. There were some relationships that needed to be mended. There were some structures and systems. And so sure enough, I took the role, and the very first day, the very first week, I should say, I got like 3 resignations on my desk. 3, 1, 2, 3. The first one was from one of the individuals who applied for the job and didn't get it. She was working there as one of the key members of the team. And she was like, nope, no, thank you. Now, this was a pretty small town. And this particular individual, just had some other motivations and really wanted this job and didn't feel like we could lead together. Not shortly thereafter, I had to release somebody. My very first hires and fires came in the first week, the first 7 days of me taking office. Very first ones was we had a resale store that supported the overhead. And, they had some stuff going on. They had some people dipping in the cookie jar. And so I had to make these really tough decisions in a split second to figure out who I was, who I wanted to be, what kind of leader I would to be. And furthermore, have a certain face portrayed to the public, right? Leading teams, leading the staff that was there, figuring out who's who very, very quickly. What seat are you in this bus? Are you in the right seat on the right bus? So many things. And then day in, day out, we were recruiting volunteers, raising money, and doing all of these things. The other opportunity I want to share is the manager who was helping to build the houses at the time told me later, and it could be a little controversial, but again, I'm just trying to give you some context. Came into the office, this was a little bit later, and he said, I don't like you. I don't like you. Now, somebody who looked very different from me, different gender, different race, different everything, and he said, I don't like you, don't you? Now, the command in me had no problem with him saying that to me, because it brought clarity over the fact it was just oil and water. It had been so hard. It was so many things we would say, and he would do the opposite. And I was finding myself really like beating my head against the wall. So to me, I was like, let's have this conversation, if we're going to do this, let's do this. And it was a very, very, very tough moment, because it's not the fact that I'm immune or callous to people who don't like me or think that style is a little much. That's not it. I want to be appreciated and accepted just like everyone else. But he was bringing the clarity that I so needed. And the root of it was that he just didn't feel like, from his background and his ability to grow up and mine, that he didn't feel like he could serve underneath my leadership, knowing that I was a woman of color. I was, pretty strong in my position. And what I realized later when I became a strength coach and I was, have a bit more processing ability to kind of strength spot, is that I was meeting another command. I was meeting another person who was high in command. Now, he was the chief dog in his area. But when it came to him leading his area, somebody in a command relationship needs to give, right? Somebody needs to take the leadership role and somebody needs to follow. And that was just not something that he was willing to make. And so only later, years later, did I actually understand what was happening, because it came out as, I don't like you, right? So part of me is like, okay. And then I realized sort of the root system of why that was there. And it was so powerful to really be able to understand how command interacts with everything else, how I ran into a chaotic situation and wasn't daunted by it, how I could, bring the order and the structure to the various things at various times, and how I could have really tough conversations and make big, bold moves in the first 7 days. It was really one of the first and the most influential teaching moments of my life.
That's really awesome stuff. Yeah. And I think it's that command piece I'm sitting on, and it's like, man, what would it look like if you had Clifton Strengths in your back pocket then, and was able to have that conversation. And the even more clarity that would have had in that relationship, and how there could have been space for partnership moving
Absolutely.
forward. But
Absolutely.
I would love to kind of move our conversation to one of my favorite things that we get to talk about. And I think some of the bread and butter of Clifton Strengths is theme dynamics, and that your command doesn't exist in a vacuum all by itself,
That's right.
but it's influenced by the things, the other talents that are around you. And so so command sits at 5 for you. Can you share kind of the rest of your top 5, and maybe some 6, 7, 8 that you really, register with and are connected to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So my top 5 are strategic, achiever, relator, maximizer, and command. Those are pretty strong, tight, the talents that sit there, followed very closely. And I would absolutely say that I use these things every day. I consider them my dominant as well: activator and connectedness. That shows up very interesting in my life when I'm making decisions. For example, the strategy kicks in day in and day out. Honestly, without ever thinking about anything, I'm thinking through options. I'm thinking through next steps. I'm thinking through a couple of chess pieces down the road. Now, coupled with achiever, and coupled with activator, and coupled with command, and even maximizer, this is what can typically happen. So there is a thought that, first of all, it can be triggered in any order. We know that, right? So let's say there's something that needs some TLC or attention, something that feels murky. In this case, I'll actually use an example of my own. So about a year and a half ago, I realized I just don't feel contented. I just don't feel contented in my life. Now, I'm as a maximizer who values efficiency, and as command who wants to get to the end and get to action, this really troubled me. And I sat in this space for a good couple of months. I know many people can relate from being sort of isolated during a pandemic, how this can play out. And so I really felt unhappy, and I couldn't put my finger on why. I couldn't figure out if it was relationally. I couldn't figure out if it was something related to my career path. I couldn't figure it out. And that was driving me crazy. So I came up with all of these ideas, and the strategic in me was going, okay, here's option A and B and C, and let me put some things. The achiever in me started to put some goals next to all of those things that could go wrong. And so I started working out. I put myself a goal for 4 days a week, and, doing a mindfulness activity and doing this affirmation journey. And I did all the things. The maximizer in me was saying, okay, look, like, let's figure out and distill, like, how are we going to make the best use of this? So if we're going to get healthy, and if we're going to do these things, what's going to get me there the fastest and the easiest? So it's the path of least resistance. And the command was like, start today, let's get moving. And of course, fueled by the activator, I was like already running before I really knew what I was doing. Now, I will lean on connectedness and say all of those things had a conversation with me. They had a conversation. Today, in the present moment, I feel healthy and I feel alive. I feel as good as I ever have. I celebrated a big milestone birthday, which was, by the way, my achiever fueled that goal. I said, by the time I reach this age, I'm going to do this, this, and this. I'm going to have this kind of thing. So they were all having a conversation. The point is this. Sometimes we think about strengths, and it's really only framed in the context of us to others. In this case, it was for me. It was the conversation for me. It was the conversation to not help and do and be to someone else, but to be the best me. And I realized that it was off, right? I realized how I needed the command to show up for me. I needed that. I'm going to do it. We're going to plow through. No conversation, no excuses, get to moving. I needed that in that season of my life. And sometimes we need that. We need the good kick in the pants. You need somebody not to coddle you. You need somebody not to hear every excuse you have of why I can't work out today. It's like, get it done. Get it done. And so there's a lot of opportunities where I think about all of the strengths in terms of how I interact with others. But then I think, I'm so grateful. I am so grateful as I understand the full breadth of my strengths that I can show up for me too.
That's really beautiful. That's awesome. I love that, like, it's like, how is this showing up in my life? And a lot of those talents that you're sharing are either strategic thinking or influencing. And it's like, so often that's kind of outside of ourselves as you're sharing, but then saying, well, how am I influencing myself?
Yeah.
What's my internal dialogue? How is this showing up in how I communicate and interact with, my own psyche and person and spirit and soul. So that's really, really cool. Well, let's get to this, because everyone wants to talk about this section for all of their strengths. And
I know what you're going to ask me.
So how has command been misused or gotten in the way? And then in terms of that, normally when this happens, it means it's raw. Like whatever the talent is, that it's raw and it hasn't been managed and learned from how to go from a talent to a strength. And so share a little bit about what it's looked like in your life when it was raw, and share a little bit of the process of how you've moved command from a raw talent to a strength in your life.
Yeah. My very first thing when you asked this question, my very first thing that I thought of is when I was in high school. I was going out for the student council. I was literally going against, right? I was running against a very popular young man. And I make the best case, I'm pushing forward. I'm giving it my all. I'm throwing myself at it. And he did hardly anything. He's hardly anything. He used his charm, probably his woo. He used all kinds of relationships that he had built. And if you look at my top 5, you see one. Like you see one. And it's not to say that that's a deficit, but for the sake of the story, he had the opposite of what I had. And I ended up losing the student council run. And I remember going to one of my mentors, a teacher at the time, and I said, why don't they like me? Why don't they like me? And it was a very interesting moment because similar to a lot of other things that I did in high school, I always had the full accolade, the full appreciation from teachers and mentors who went, wow, she's a really great leader. But from my peers, not so much. And the reason is people would say, Tiesha, you're bossy. You take over. You can steamroll, in fact, if you're not careful. And so in that really raw state, it was not understanding the level and the care and the responsibility of influence. So I would say things like I was the yearbook editor. I would say appointed by a teacher, right? Not by popular opinion, appointed by a teacher. I was the yearbook editor. And I would say things like, you're late, I'm gonna fail you. This is me as like a 15-year-old kid. I am not the teacher. I don't have any ability to give you any grades, but I was giving you the business. I was giving you the consequences. I was giving you the tough love. I wanted to tell you how a TI is. Like, who was I? I was in a place where I did not understand the responsibility of influencer leadership. Mm-hmm. And so as opposed to things like fear or hard compliance or not understanding who I was, and this is the favorite thing that I do with clients, understanding who I was and how it sits with others. I didn't have any clue. And in some places I would dare to say, I don't think I cared. I don't think I cared. The beauty of strengths is that it's taught me to make peace with the things that are in their raw state, and it's given me the challenge of making that a strength. And it will always be my choice and anyone's choice to take something from its raw state. So I certainly progressed from being this sort of power hungry, like I'm in charge, I am the one in charge, to somebody who needed to use influence wisely, who needed to use it with other people in mind, and to be very, very mindful of how my presence was going to interact and influence others at any given time, whether I wanted that responsibility or not. I think through all of the times in the progressions where it was just about like me, and it was about me being the leader, and I'm going to fail you, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I know that my presence is fake, to going, I'm completely secure in myself as a leader to delegate. I'm completely and totally able to let you shine. I'm completely and totally able now to pull back if there's another command who is completely and competent and in full, full control of the situation. I don't have to say a word. You don't even have to know that I have command, truth be told. And those are huge attributes, as I've really, really, really learned when people, and this is important for somebody with command, when people want to be led and when they need to find their own way. And sometimes people need to find their own way so they can learn, so they can wrestle. And I, in those early days, was like, it's a gift for me to help you get to the right solution, as opposed to letting you wiggle your way to the right solution. So it's no longer this, let me get you from point A to Z. It's, where do you want to be? And if you need tough love, and I can know it in my gut, if you need tough love, I can do that for you. And if you don't, I can do that for you as well.
Yeah. As you were sharing, I thought of the Spider-Man quote, with great power comes great responsibility.
So true.
And
so
true. I think command is like this powerful talent. And so it's like, with that power of influencing, that comes with that responsibility of like wielding that well, and serving yourself and others with respect and dignity in the midst of that. So totally. Can you share a little bit more of maybe some experiences or things that happened that kind of were like learning moments and how to do that?
Oh, so many. Where do you even begin?
Yeah, right? You got all day.
I know, right? Well, I think through a couple, going back to habitats. So as a result of these things that happened in a very short amount of time, I'm going to share something that I haven't shared a lot publicly, but something that I don't feel particularly proud of. I'm not embarrassed by, but not proud of. I went through as the person in charge. And honestly, when I say that I was in charge, I was really in charge. Like, I was really the only person there day in, day out. If there was a policy that needed to change, I was making it. If there was a big, bold decision, I was making it. Leading the team, day in, day out, I was making it. But one of the things that I did as a result of so many people sort of like being crazy, right? And this was honestly the hand that I got dealt a little bit, was I went crazy on policy. I went crazy on policy, level 12, off the charts. So we had, an employee handbook that was this thick, and it included everything, and to cover ourselves over everything that someone had done at some point. And this was a time where command really was getting in the way, and I was growing in my leadership. Again, it was my first full, only me leadership experience. It depends on you. But I became somebody that was really, really rigid with compliance. And that is a danger with command. Knowing and feeding the results of compliance isn't necessarily a successful result. It's not an unsuccessful result, but it's not the only marker of success. If people are doing what you are asking or telling, and people are doing that, that doesn't equal success. What is actually equal to success is people enjoying and them coming alive as they still need to be doing and moving in whatever direction they need to be moving. So that was a huge miss. It was a huge miss. I know that for those that first little bit of time, I changed the culture. And in reflection later, I was a leader that I didn't want to be. I truly didn't want to be that. I truly did not. I wanted to motivate people and empower people. I wanted to bring out the best in people. I didn't want to build an environment where people were nervous on every turn and move about doing something wrong or putting their jobs or their livelihood or their mental well-being in jeopardy. So that was certainly a miss. There's so many other opportunities. I think about command as somebody who is willing to rise up, but so many other opportunities where I really could have delegated for the most success. I really could have just said, you know what? I know you're going to struggle. I know you're going to struggle. I know you're not going to have it right. And I am choosing to look the other way. But for a long time, it was, if it's going to be done right, then I need to be very careful and show you how to do it exactly the way it needs to be done. What a gift I am to you. What a gift.
Yeah.
Letting people figure out their way letting people, and I say this now, I let people make calculated mistakes. Calculated mistakes, meaning I'm not going to let you implode, right? I'm not going to let you fall. I'm not going to let you drown. But I will give you a certain amount of latitude that, yeah, that would be a really hard way around the mountain. And maximizer, that could have been a lot easier. You just did this.
Yeah.
That I need to let you wrestle. And there was some days early on where I really could have delegated and allowed other people to step up and find a lot of strength and comfort in their own leadership as well. And share that stage a little bit. So those would be two examples that come right off the top of my head. Delegation, for sure, and making sure that along the way you are proud of who you are as you lead, and not just where you're leading people to.
That's really great. So I have two more questions. One is, how in your coaching right now does command show up? Because in terms of like a lot of how people talk about how to do coaching and things, it doesn't always feel like command is like a, sorry, my screen like disappeared there for a second. Sorry guys. In terms of when we talk about coaching and how to coach people, sometimes the command talent doesn't seem like one that would fit at times. And so I don't believe that's true, just to preface that, but I'd love to hear how you use command in your coaching.
I have found command to be my biggest asset as a coach, to be honest. A lot of times people think about coaches and coaches ask you questions, right? They just get you talking and you lead yourself to where you want to go. But let's not be mistaken. A really great coach knows exactly where you need to go. And the types of questions they ask you are very pointed, they're crafted in such a way that it is leading you potentially to a place or an aha moment or a bit of awareness and openness and reflection. I lean into command often in two ways. One is I have a couple of courses. My signature course is called Clarity, Courage, Action. Now, we talked about these words clarity and action as being very indicative of the command domain. And there they are in the title of the course. Clarity, courage, action. Here's
and
the
even
thing.
to cut you off, I think even courage, like people with command have the courage to have clarity and action.
Yeah.
And so,
and they lean in, they want it, right? So here's the thing, the command in me can spot two things. I can spot a really strong leader, and then I have to figure out whether I'm the leader or they are, or a group of leaders, right? So that happens. The other thing that I can spot very easily is somebody who's very weak. And I didn't even talk about that a little bit earlier, but it just tends to be innate. So if somebody is really struggling or really unsure of themselves, or frankly leading and they're scared beyond their belief, I can always sniff it out. And I tell people that probably scares me the most about my command, is that I can sniff it. I feel like a predator sometimes, where it's like, you're weak, like, ugh. And I can either take that and make you feel that big about being weak, or I can find easily the areas of weakness that sometimes you don't even know you have. And so those are the areas immediately that as a coach, I can really help somebody uncover the whole of who they are. Somebody may come to me and say, I have this goal. I want to, I just had a client and she said, I'm launching a business. I'm doing XYZ goals. As we started in our journey together, and she was going through this courage and action program with me. Actually, the root of this was a really broken relationship that she had not mended. It's way far away from the coaching and the business and the strategy. Now, strategy number one, no problem. Mm-hmm. But I'm not just interested in your stuff. I'm interested in all of who you are. So command really helps me say, oh, this is what you want to talk about. Let's talk about that. And then let's deliver you some medicine and a candy. Let's give you what you need. And talk about what you need in addition, so that you leave whole. And command helps me crazy. I mean, it's like I said, it's probably the number one thing that I lean on in my coaching.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that. Well, I think, as we wrap up, there was just so many amazing nuggets that were in there. But I want to kind of ask you, because you're so great at clarity, if you have some really clear action steps for someone who has command, on how to develop that and really turn it into a strength.
Yeah. You know, based on my personal experience, I would ask a couple of questions in the true spirit of coaching. And that is, number one, if you have command, are you happy, not with where you're taking people, but how their process is? How is the question. Not where, not what, not when, not the metrics, not the outcomes, not the deliverables, but how. Putting an emphasis on the how or the process or the journey is just as important as the metric itself. The other thing that I would say is for command to be able to truly strength spot. So if you have command in your dominant, or even if it's somewhere there in the middle and you go, yeah, sometimes in chaos, I need to rise up. The true question is, how are you landing? Question number two. How do you land with others? And if you feel like people are shrinking back, or they're perceiving it negatively, or they're feeling trampled upon, then it may be time for you to look around and say, hey, I'm still going to lead us, but what else do I need to draw upon so that people don't feel steamrolled as we get there? The last thing that I would say is, as you are strength spotting and working with others, sometimes you are going to get others that are high in command, and you can almost always tell by people's quick decisions. You can help if there's things that feel murky and man, they felt like they got to that, or their gut inclination is very strong. Those are some clues. What I would say to those who are high in this theme is to ask others who are around you what they think. Before you create the plan, before you create the decision, before you chart the way forward, gather input. Because the truth is, the matter is, especially paired with something like belief that can lock in real fast, or activator who's off and running before everybody's even thinking about it. Somebody high in this talent, right? If this is very intense for you, the time to gain input, the time to gain feedback, and the time to gain people's openness that you've included them in the process is at the very beginning. It's at the very, very beginning. So asking people what they think, or asking people what resonates in them at the beginning is so important. Now, here's the clincher and here's the saving grace. It's up to you still to decide still the way forward. Just because people will vocalize or give input or feedback does not diminish that gut inkling that you have. You may garner 5 pieces of feedback that are all different than yours and still choose to go in a different direction, and that's okay. But how the people around you just felt, and that they felt included, and that their voice was heard, and that they were participating and they're along the ride, is everything. And that makes all the difference. So really leading into where some of those blind spots could be, including people on the journey, making sure you're focused on the how. All of those things would be critical for somebody leaning in to this particular talent.
That's great stuff. I love that, like getting people's insights. It connects to some of the coaching and team stuff that I'll do with people around, like, are we having intellectual conflict so that everyone's voice is heard? And because if that doesn't happen, we can't all get on the boat. Like, unless you're heard and feel understood, you can't get on the boat. And then if you can't get on the boat and you're kind of half-hearted into it, it's hard to keep people accountable.
It's hard to keep them accountable, and it's hard to keep them even owning the fact that it's their choice. They just go, oh, that's just their plan. I'm following what the rules are. I'm following what corporate wants us to do, right? They say things like that. And it's a very detached framework. It's a very detached communication. And it always stems from, I had no part of this. You delivered the way. You delivered the solution, and you didn't bring me into the process, and therefore I'm not married to it at all. You see this all the time in organizations. I see this all the time in organizations. Some executives somewhere sometimes will work with an outside consultant. They solve the problem. They come up with the solution. They come up with the way forward. They deliver it down, and there is no ownership on many, many levels. This is command in a very different way outside of an individual. This is command on the grouping, right? This is the same thing. The same principles are coming out there. People need ownership.
Absolutely. That's great stuff. And so for any of the team leaders listening, I'm like, this is the money. Like, if you want to lead a team well, like, being able to have everyone's voices heard and engage, and what do we do as a team, because we're all committed to that, and everyone feels heard and understood, then you can make a decision as the leader. And if you're in command and you're in that leadership position, it's like, yeah, you get to make the decision. And if you're the leader and you don't have command, like, you're the one making decision, but everyone needs to be heard. And when someone can say, hey, we made a decision that wasn't where I was going with it, but I was heard, I was understood, and I understand why the decision was made the way it was. Now they're like on board. And then you have the ability to keep people accountable. And then there's engagement. Like, people
Yep.
will engage in the commitment.
Yep.
And that's where real progress and results happen. So, yeah, and that is just the bigger picture on leadership there. And I think we have
Right.
a lot to learn from healthy people in command who have healthy command, because they really are natural leaders. So, Tiesha, thank you so much for being on. It was awesome. And yeah, I think everyone should just head over to Tieshia Moore and .com and connect with her, because yeah, she's just a wealth of knowledge. And yeah, I just think really awesome. I've been enjoying getting to know her. So, well, that's another episode of Talent Talk. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more episodes later. Take care. Bye.